Hi, my name is Dwight Lemke. I want to introduce you to the topic of organizational behavior today, or what we in the field call OB. But first, I need to think and put it in a broader context that there's this big field of organization science, organization studies as we call it, that at one end starts at the very micro level, which is basically cognitive psychology. In the middle, we talk about group behavior, departmental behavior, behavior of entire organizations. Then at the far level, we get into political science and economics and talk about structures and systems and industries. So it covers this whole broad area, but organization behavior is pretty much the bottom half here. I would always consider the other part of that organization theory, which is my basic background. But as I said, it brings in psychology, sociology, political science, economics, anthropology, and as such, it's a derived discipline. That is, we don't do original research like the psychologists, but we're not trying to figure out basic human behaviors. What we're trying to figure out is the way that people behave within organizations. So our research is focused not only on the applied aspects of that, but that we derive our theories from elsewhere. It's got a very long history, though. Max Weber, the German sociologist, talked about the work ethic of people. We wrote a book on the Protestant work ethic, trying to explain why Northern Europe was so much more prosperous than Southern Europe. He hitched his wagon to the Calvinists at that point in time. But within the field itself, probably the first major thrust forward, would have been with Babbage, or probably even better yet, Frederick Winslow Taylor. Taylor came up with what he called the scientific management school. And what we're trying to do is apply actual science to management, which made a whole lot of sense because he, like Henri Fayol, a contemporary, were both engineers. And their idea was that we can take scientific principles and use those to manage organizations. And to a certain extent, we still follow that today. I mean, the Galbraiths, were looking at time and motion studies about the same time that Taylor was doing his work on scientific management. And if you look at companies like United Parcel Service, UPS, they actually looked at which foot drivers should put on the back of the vehicle first, and by saving time so that they put their left foot on first, they climb up there, they've got the package to get back down, they save a step. McDonald's spent money investing in a machine to salt their French fries because it figured it saved them 9 seconds per box of fries. So we still do that kind of stuff. That's been going on for 100 years, so that's pretty impressive. But the field moves on. You have to remember that the science is always advancing and adapting. At least it's supposed to. And then there's also the fashions and fads that people don't quite enough understand. That what happens in the broader society also happens within social sciences. That's something that was not right or wrong, but is now no longer popular, we stop talking about. So Taylorism was seen as overly deterministic to a whole lot of people. In fact, there was a congressional hearing in the U.S. on it. And in some, particularly European or British literature, we refer to this period called Fordism. Henry Ford's Willow Run plant, which is at one end, literally coal, iron ore, and rubber went in, and out the other end came finished automobiles. So it was seen as being overly deterministic, overly chauvinistic, overly paternalistic, if you will. So we moved on from Taylor, the Galbraiths, and Fayol to the Hawthorne studies under Elton Mayo. What they were trying to find out was whether or not environmental conditions affected people's behavior. Well, of course they do. But they found a curious thing as well, that if you turn the heat up in one of their labs, productivity went up. If you turn the heat down, productivity went down. If you raise the light level, productivity went up. If you lower the lighting level, productivity went up. So they were kind of dumbfounded. Turns out when you watch people, they do different things. Part of the social milieu is what was happening here. They got involved with a big, important research project. They took their jobs more seriously, and they didn't want to make the researchers look bad, which talks about observer bias from that point in time. But we've learned a lot from that. I mean, it started the whole human relations, or the human school of management, and we looked at people as individuals and what they drew from their environment. Another theorist I like to talk about is Mary Parker Follett. She wrote a short little book, a little article called On the Giving of Orders. And basically what Follett was arguing, this was 1927, that what people should really do, rather than give orders, was we as managers should sit down with the employees and come to the logic of the situation, which is pretty much modern management, isn't it? So, 1927, come on, 90 years later, this is what we're still teaching? That's pretty damned impressive, if you ask me. So these schools of thought come in and out. You got to remember what was happening in society when that came out. The 1920s in the United States, the flapper era, prohibition had kicked in. And things were a little wild, so people loosened up. They weren't being rigid anymore. We're not engineers anymore. Now we're sociologists. So we move on from there to more administrative schools, or even take another detour into psychology with B.F. Skinner. Remember, Skinner was a behaviorist who looked at conditioned responses. He's moving on from from stuff that other people had done. Ivan Pavlov with his dogs, for example. But Skinner showed that we can, by using stimulus and response, we can get a whole range of behaviors from human beings. Well, that was back in the 50s when things were kind of rigid again. And the 60s came around and said, oh, no, we can't do that anymore because it's, we really shouldn't be telling people what to do. We shouldn't be manipulating them. Okay. I was in a meeting years ago, and one of the people in the meeting said, well, that's just carrot and stick thinking. Me being me, I said, okay, you're telling me carrot and sticks don't work? Well, they do, but. Okay. They work, right? Yes. Are they unethical? No. But, all right. Then what are we arguing about? He just wanted to, project his own virtue and say, well, we're well beyond that now. No, we're not. If you get paid a bonus at the end of the year, that's a carrot, kids. So then we had, a bunch of administration schools. Chester Barnard is probably the most famous for this. He wrote a book on the principles of administration. It's quite brilliant. It's called The Functions of the Executive. I used to have students read it, but they kept going, God, you're old. But the idea behind the functions of the executive was basically to set up an environment in which people would prosper, in which they would do good work for you. It was written in the 50s, but it's still worthwhile, listening to today. And probably, in my lifetime, the greatest theorist was probably Peter Drucker. Drucker kept talking about the organization of the future for 50 years and never did quite tell me, although he did talk about the organization's future looking like a symphony orchestra, where you had a bunch of virtuoso musicians playing around the standard, score. A guy that I know at Michigan said, no. It's going to look like a jazz orchestra where you have virtuoso musicians who are improvising around a score. And in order to prove this one time, we brought a jazz orchestra to the Academy of Management meetings. But so now and then we can still have fun doing this. But basically, organization behavior is teaching you to do what managers do. Managers don't manage organizations. They manage people within them. And if I can hammer that point home to you, that it's the people in the organization that we're managing, and that it's them that we need to focus in on, we can be much better managers. And I can probably leave you with that today. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye-bye.